When I moved to Lafayette my freshman year of college, I was on a mission, not for good grades or great parties, but to see what Louisiana was hiding in its background. That's when I stumbled across Lake Martin. One visit turned into two, then 10, and before I knew it, I was completely obsessed. Every trip felt like stepping into a different world. Sometimes I'd meet locals who knew every ripple of the water, and other times I'd run into tourists from halfway across the planet just trying not to be eaten by mosquitoes. Eventually, I joined the Lake Martin Facebook page because that's what true love looks like in the 21st century, and found out it was actually a protected preserve. With so many parks and natural sites in America being forgotten or ignored, I wanted to shine a little spotlight on this wild, muddy, beautiful corner of Louisiana and the people working to protect it. Just outside of Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, there's a place where the water mirrors the sky and the trees seem to breathe. This is Lake Martin, part of the Cypress Island Preserve, one of the most breathtaking wetlands in the state. But beyond its beauty, Lake Martin is a living classroom. For years, students, scientists, and locals have come here to study the balance between nature and people, a balance that's constantly changing. In this documentary, we'll explore the stories that flow through these waters. From the wildlife that calls it home to the people working to protect it and the community that depends on it.
So, I'm Jill Andrew. I am the Cypress Island Preserve Manager for the Nature Conservancy, and I've been with the Nature Conservancy for 12 years now. And my role here is to preserve the public grounds of the preserve and manage our volunteer program. So, for those who haven't been here before, I would like to emphasize that the preserve is one of the largest hardwood forest cypress tupelo swamp that's intact outside of the Atchafalaya Basin. So we're located in the Teche Vermilion watershed, and the preserve is about 9,000 acres of intact forest. If you look at a map, you'll see the green Atchafalaya Basin, and then the next big blob of green is Cypress Island Preserve. So that's something I would like for people to know. And then, of course, Lake Martin is the highlight of the preserve where most of the people come to visit. Cypress Island came to be through two land donations from Texaco. So the Louisiana chapter within the Nature Conservancy was formed, and in 1995, Texaco donated about 2,000 acres of its property, which is mainly northern portions of the preserve and north of Lake Martin. And then in 2001, another donation was made by Texaco, which, by the way, is now Chevron. And it was an additional 6,000 acres, which encompasses the western and southern portions of Lake Martin and some large chunks of land south of Prairie Highway.
When you turn down the gravel road toward Lake Martin, the first thing that jumps out, besides maybe a few startled egrets, is a massive castle-like house rising out of nowhere. It looks straight out of a Louisiana fairy tale. Thing is, I've never seen a car there, not once. But every now and then, when I'm driving back a little too late and the trees start whispering, I spot a few flickering lights on the inside. It's a mysterious, a little eerie, and it makes me wonder, what's the story behind this mansion?
It's always been a mysterious curiosity of visitors, myself included. It's just an interesting piece of property with that sort of architecture, and there's even a moat around the castle, is from what I hear. And see, and I don't know much about the property owner. It has come up for sale a couple times for the right price. It could be yours. I don't know if it's for sale again, but it has been in the past, and it's a lot of people stop and take pictures. One of the main reasons why we think this area is important to protect is because it's one of the largest, intact remnants of hardland forest and cypress tupelo swamp, and with that, it supports the diversity of animals and plants and birds and stuff, which is very important here.
I've kayaked all over South Louisiana. At Palmetto State Park, the waters move slow and easy, shaded by trees that seem older than time. Lake Fosse stretches wide and wild, full of hidden corners where you can paddle for hours without seeing another soul. The Atchafalaya Basin is a whole different world. muddy, mysterious, and alive with sounds that make you feel both small and part of something huge. And then there's the intercoastal, where tugboats rumble past you and you're reminded that these waterways are still working just as hard as they ever have. But Lake Martin feels different. Heavier air, sharper reflections, and louder silence. I had to know why.
I would say what makes this swamp, what makes it unique compared to other swamps in South Louisiana is because it's very compact, and it's accessible. It's accessible to people who might not otherwise have access to the vastness of the Atchafalaya Basin. You don't have to have a boat to experience the swamp. You don't have to have a kayak. You can basically hike or bike and we're kind of set in between these urban areas too, which is another good reason, it helps for accessibility.
I am Reagan Doe. I'm a volunteer for the Cypress Island Nature Preserve. I think it's super important to preserve places like this because I feel like there's a lot of expansion and building, and there's a really big push towards tech right now. And if you haven't heard the news, there's a few data centers that are going to be built in Louisiana. And preserving places like this help prevent or show other people that you can't just expand, you can't just build. You'll lose a lot of nature.
Our permanent residents that you can see most times a year, Cypress Island is, it's a diversity of plants and animals and birds. So the popular ways you'll see gators, alligators. Lake Martin is home to some very large alligators. You'll see a variety of reptiles, turtles, snakes. We do have some white-tailed deer that you might see every once in a while, and they're not. And of course, the popular birds. Lots of people come to see different birds. We have 213 plus bird species that come through this area. Some are permanent residents, and we also get a lot of migratory birds. The snake bird, or anhinga, yes, they do look like a snake when they are in the water, and they do hunt fish, and they do eat snakes. Fall is just a nice time. Temperatures are cooler. We get fall migratory birds. And then spring is a wonderful time to be here. Things are starting to warm up. Flowers are starting to bloom. We have the Louisiana irises that are native here that bloom. The bird breweries start to fill up with different birds coming in to nest, and just everything starts to move around. Yeah, before it gets too hot. Right. One of the most unique things that I can remember, and this was before my time in the Nature Conservancy, is, of course, rookeries change. They're ephemeral. They don't always stay the same. But many years ago, in the early 2000s, there used to be thousands of nesting pairs. And it was just this big spectacle. I mean, the birds were right up to what was now Rookery Road, what used to be Rookery Road. And there was just this spectacle of birds, everywhere, and then the line of photographers. So we do get lots of local people, they come in and say, wow, I knew this was here, or they know about this area and have their own story. We get a lot of tourists. So one thing we do with our volunteer program is we track where people are coming from. Obviously, we have people from all 50 states and 70 countries and in provinces, all around the world. We get researchers multiple times a year. We just had recently a herpetologist who we've been working with for years. He's great. He's looking for a particular species of turtle. And then you recently had, this one was different, an ecologist. Okay, so just took some samples, and so we're kind of interested to see what that report to go on his research. And also need a lot of filmmakers, people like you and people from National Geographic and some, large to small film companies. Our volunteer program it consists of docents. So people, you would get trained through the Nature Conservancy, and we have volunteers that staff the Monitor Center on. And then every so often, we will advertise for like on the ground work, painting, or other small index projects will also get bumped too. So I think the best way to say our impacts with the local community is we're just here, we're available. Right, you were saying is very, it's, for people access. It's accessible to the public. People can come out here. Now, we don't necessarily have an educational outreach program, but we do work with schools or have school groups that come out here and they'll use the preserve as an educational platform to, learn whatever it is they're learning. So we did get a lot of that to start the year. I think right now our biggest challenge is just maintaining infrastructure in the past could be set by so many parks and people places that are to the public. We have a changing climate. It's a harsh environment out here. Since I've been here, there have been 3 major floods, and with each flood became some damage that's we're still trying to fix. For example, our boardwalk there is a section that's in disrepair, and we're just having to rebuild it a little at a time. I think, a way that they can protect this, obviously, the Nature Conservancy is a nonprofit, and, we would love donations. We would love people to help out whenever we ask for volunteers. They usually do. But for people who are just not really familiar with the Nature Conservancy or don't want to go that route, and if you're here, just be mindful and respectful of the land. Don't litter, don't harass small things like that.
It's important to preserve places like this in the face of the expansion that's happening with tech. Like I said, there are major data centers that are going to be built. It'll take so much, it'll pollute all the water that's around it. These things take gallons and gallons of water. There's one data center, and it's going to be the size of Manhattan. And I think it's really important to preserve places like this to remind young people how important these things are, how beautiful, how important to the ecosystem it is.
And that's a wrap on our adventure through this amazing nature preserve. If you want to join in on the fun and help keep it beautiful, just hop over to the Nature Conservancy website, scroll all the way to the bottom, and click on Volunteer.